It's time to hear it from Harlan. Utah Director of Athletics Mark Harlan takes you behind the scenes with the Utes, the Pac-12, and collegiate athletics. Now here's your host, Mike Lagesholt.
Welcome to the April edition of the Hear It From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi, along with Utah Director of Athletics Mark Harlan. I'm Mike Lagesholt. Coming up on a jam-packed show, Mark will dive into the latest on the coronavirus impact on Utah athletics. Katie Faulk of Utah Softball and the Crimson Council joins Mark for his one-on-one. Also, Scott Kull, Deputy AD for External Operations, drops by, and we'll get to some of your questions as well. Well, Mark, great to see you. We're doing this by Zoom today, as we're doing pretty much everything by Zoom, it seems like these days. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Good to see and hear you as well, and honored to have the opportunity to get our constituent base up to date on what's going on here.
We appreciate you dropping by. I know it's been a busy time for you. Mark, I thought a kind of an interesting place to start would be just kind of to go back to last time we did this. It was March 3rd when we recorded our last podcast, and then a little over a week later, the world as we knew it changed in so many ways. I mean, we had teams on the floor playing in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena on Wednesday night, and by Friday we were shutting everything down. It was just such a wild 48 to 72 hours with the coronavirus impacting college athletics in so many facets of our lives. Just what's this last month been like for you?
Well, it certainly has been a whirlwind. And first, before I get into that, I just, offer all my best thoughts and wishes to everybody listening and what they're going through as family members, and hope everybody's safe and following all the directives to get us all through this. But Mike, as it pertains to our department, you're exactly right. I mean, it seems like sometimes it was an hour ago, and sometimes it seems a year ago that we were in Las Vegas, and we had finished our game earlier that day on a tough loss, on a buzzer beater to Oregon State, and the day just kind of, took a direction that I don't think anybody could have predicted. I was on the games committee for the Pac-12. We had assembled right after our game with the commissioner, three of us and him, to decide what we were going to do with the remaining games in the tournament. And the decision was made to go without fans for the Thursday morning game. That announcement came out, and of course the members of the Jazz were announced to have the virus that night, and like you said, everything changed. So the first thing was just getting our team out of Vegas back home, and getting on the phone with Dr. Watkins and university leadership about what the university was going to do. The first thing, the second thing, and the third thing of importance, and it remains so today, was to make sure that our student athletes were safe and in places where that they could stay safe. So that just aligned our coaches and our staff and really everybody, because it was an interesting time, right? It was spring break. And so we really wanted to make sure the teams that weren't in competition had information whether or not they should come back to campus or not. So it was quite a crazy time. Katie Faulk on our softball team, who we'll hear from later, was a member of our spring sports teams. That team in particular was up in Seattle when everything was canceled. We had our ski team that was literally in day 2 of the national championships up in the Dakotas. They were winning at the time. They were literally called down the hill. Gymnastics was preparing for their last home meet of the year, sold out crowd expected. So, it ended with a gigantic thud, and there was a lot of emotions with our young people to go through that, as you can quite imagine. I think Katie will talk about that later. But really, as we learn more and more almost every hour from doctors and others, that really we needed to start really focusing in on safety. So
no
that's
question.
what we've been able to do. And so, as we sit here today, with the online learning environment and where we are, I think we've come a long way. And I'm pleased with how we're doing.
What's been crazy to me, Mark, is, when you have things come up, you can generally come up with a plan and you stick with that plan. But this thing has been so fluid and moving so quickly by the hour at times. I imagine in your chair, it has to be hard to really plot out a course for where we're going, because we don't know where we're going at times. So, for folks who maybe, wanting to know what your job has been like this last month, what's a typical day been like for you in terms of conference calls, Zoom meetings with your staff, with your constituents, and the conference around the country? What's a day been like for you this past past month?
Well, like many that are learning to work from home, I think this is my 4th week along with my senior staffs working at home. Our staff started 5 weeks ago as a full department. I think if maybe you went into that dynamic thinking, well, gosh, how am I going to be productive and how am I going to communicate? And, I've been really pleasantly surprised to even realize that communication has probably even increased in this environment. With technology being what it is, we're able to, for example, have for a while, just until this week, we rolled it back, but daily Zoom calls with all our coaches, which includes, of course, our mental health specialists, our doctors, our academic support staff, and everybody, along with our coaches, making sure that everybody's got what they need. I've been pretty much on every team call. I've got football tonight to check in with all our student athletes. We've got our Crimson Council leadership group, been able to work with them. So spending a lot of time with our student athletes in this environment and our coaches, making sure that they have the information. I try at night to read different crisis type examples from the past. I'm reading the book on Truman right now and what he had to go through. And the one thing that's really true is communication has to be at the highest possible level. And if you think you're there, you even need to do more. So to that end, we've gone away from a monthly all staff meeting to every Tuesday morning we're having staff meetings. So a lot of work there. And then I would say the remainder of my time is national issues. I'm on the football oversight committee. Of course, on the Pac-12, the ADs meet every morning with Commissioner Scott to go over all the issues that we were dealing with, which originally was about eligibility for spring athletes, and now has really segued into planning and modeling for return in the fall. So there's a lot going on, but I tell you, every time you get on a Zoom call and you think you might be a little worn out and you see a student athlete there, your energy just gets back to the level it should be, and you're positive about making sure that you're making decisions in their best interest. But I got to tell you, Mike, and you're included on this, I've been so impressed with our staff, the way they've worked, the way that they know that the thing is the thing, and it's our student athletes and getting them all through this. So just can't say enough about our staff and our coaches and the way they're managing all this, along with our student athletes.
Yeah, Mark, you hear the word unprecedented so much when people talk about this thing, and that's really the only word to me that makes sense. This is uncharted territory for so many of us in various facets. Mark, you did talk about the fact that the U is essentially closed down. It's online classes for the rest of the spring, the summer as well. And we also look at projections of when this thing will peak in Utah and around the country and how that impacts when campuses can reopen. So I know at this point that there's so much that can happen. It's so fluid. It's hard to pin down dates, but maybe a better way for me to ask this is, what needs to happen with the control of this disease and the way we police it before we can get people back on campus for classes and get our athletes back on campus for training and eventually start things up in the fall with sports competition?
Well, I think the one thing that is true in an environment that is ever changing is that we are a part of the university in all regards. We have students, they just happen to be world-class competitors. So our operating rhythm will synchronize with the universities. So, when it's decided at the university level, when students can start coming back, those are the clues that I would look for if I'm following the return to play models. The other thing I would say as it relates to just my very specific work on the football oversight of just the return of football in the fall is everything will start with what the doctors and sports scientists believe is in the best interest of that young person. In the case of football, it's a very physical sport, as we know, and we've learned so much over the last 10 years in the sports science perspective. I mean, I remember back when I was a student manager back in the day at the University of Arizona in the mid-'80s, and you'd see the guys, you wouldn't see them all summer, and then they'd show up about 3.5 weeks before the first game. You throw them into camp and you go. Those days are long gone. So we have to really develop a system, and that's what we're spending a lot of time on, to how many weeks that the body needs to be ready before you enter into a physical camp type environment to get ready for day one. So obviously nobody knows what date, it'll be safe to have a football game. No one knows that, but what you can do is put the processes together and how many days that will take, and as such, how many weeks, and then be able to slide that appropriately to whatever quote unquote opening day might look like. And I think there's some good commonalities developing across the Power Five conferences. You got to be in sync with everybody. The challenge will be where, when you get into the date part, is maybe it might be clear in one region of the country and not clear in the other. And so how do you manage that? And we don't have all the answers for that now, but that's what we're studying. And then the same will go through all our fall sports. And the Pac-12 has formulated committees to work on what those specific sport athletes need. So we're going through that now, knowing that we just don't know what those dates will be, but we have to be ready when the picture emerges more clearly to when that can be. So we'll keep everybody informed. I think it's very important to be transparent. That's what we plan on doing.
All right. Well, very good, Mark. We'll kind of let that part of the conversation go right there. Again, so many things that are fluid at this point. We'll get back to you down the road. Let's kind of look ahead a little bit in some respects. We'll hear from Katie Faulk from the softball team in just a moment. And, the people kind of caught up in this whole thing in terms of college athletics go are the athletes who had their seasons abruptly ended. The softball team was in Seattle on a road trip. We had other teams out for various things, and all of a sudden things ended. So, you wonder, what happens to their seasons, their eligibility, and rather quickly. And I applaud the NCAA for this. The Division I Council voted to allow schools to provide spring sport athletes an additional season of competition, extend their period of eligibility. So the rules will be adjusted to allow for more members on scholarship on teams coming up next year. Mark, I know you've been involved in a lot of conversations about this at the conference level, at the national level. Your thoughts on this ruling by the NCAA?
Yeah, it was a thoughtful process to look at what was lost by the young people, and these are young people who spent their entire lives preparing, to be on an intercollegiate athletic team, and certainly even more so for that senior year where
right,
just been waiting for. So I was pleased with the decision. I also thought the way that it was ruled on was fair, to allow the schools and coaches to kind of work with their young people and where they could give them the full aid back that they had their senior year. But in some places, maybe they don't have the finances for that. And if they needed to lower it, but still have the person come back if they so desired. So we've gone through that process at the University of Utah. We're excited about the seniors that have decided to come back. We were able to make it work so that anybody that is coming back at the aid that they previously had. So really applaud our coaches and students for being thoughtful about what they need to do. And so the super seniors, as I like to call them, will be back. And the other decision that was made was to freeze all the years. So if you were a junior this year, you'd come back next year as a junior, and those kids will decide if they want to leave or not too. But it was a good decision, for the student athletes to be a part of that process. And we're excited about the ones on both sides that will be coming back, but equally excited for those that want to move on. It might not be shocking. I know not for many of us that work around them all the time, but some had jobs already lined up. Some had internships that they wanted to do, and some were going to go off to grad school at other places. So whatever they're going to do, we're going to support them. But we're excited that they had the option to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, that's well put. It's so hard to freeze time. In fact, you can't do it, but it gives some athletes an option at least to come back for an extra year if they choose to do so. Mark, before we move on to our next segment, I want to talk to you about the Rice-Eccles Stadium expansion. I drove by there today, and work is still moving forward with that project. It's on target for an opening in the fall of 2021. There's been a lot of interest in the inventory in terms of seats and suites and load seating from fans via Zoom until they can get people back in that preview center. Just tell us the latest on that project as it relates to the coronavirus and kind of the standstill on campus right now.
Well, appreciate the question. We know that the governor did have construction projects on the list of essential for the state of Utah. And so that's allowed us to continue the work by our construction team led by Layton Construction, our architect team and others. And as we tape this today, Mike, we are on schedule, if not in some regards ahead of schedule in the work that's being done. You mentioned that you drove by. Anyone that does drive by there right now will see real progress on the Olympic cauldron, which has now been moved outside the fence line. It's really starting to come together nicely. So we're moving forward on that. They're taking all the safety measures that are required by the state, the contracting teams, and very honored by their work. So, where we are right now is we're pushing ahead. I know Scott Kull, our great deputy athletic director, will be on in a little bit, and he probably can update you a little bit more specifically on the seating and how that's all going. But very honored about Layton Construction doing their work, and we're going to just continue moving forward. If something comes up, we'll make the adjustments that we need to. But as we sit here today, we're looking forward to that fall 21 opening.
All right, certainly a piece of good news there, Mark. Yeah, it was kind of fun to drive by and see work taking place, and they're moving some earth around, and the base of the cauldron was there. Kind of excited to see that. Kind of an uplifting sight in times of our lives that have been so difficult. So very good, Mark. Great stuff. We're going to step aside for a moment, then come back with a couple more interviews. We'll be joined by Katie Faulk of the Utah softball team, who is also a member of the Crimson Council that has played a vital role in our transition to this period on campus, and also Utah Deputy AD Scott Kull will join us in just a moment. Back with more of the Here From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi after this. And welcome back to more of the April edition of the Here From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi. Mike Lagashow with you for a special expanded edition of our Here From Harlan podcast. And we're pleased to be joined now by a guy who's been very busy, just like Mark, the past month or so with everything going on. Scott Kull, the Utah Deputy Director of Athletics for External Relations. He's my boss. I should probably get his title right. But Scott, appreciate you hopping on for a few moments.
Hey, you're welcome, Mike. I'm so excited to be on and talk to you. And I wanted to tell you, personally, what a great job you did on the Pac-12 Classic game of TCU against Utah back in 2008. As you know, I was at TCU at the time, and such a memorable game. And it seems like just yesterday, but just watching you kind of narrate that, you did a fantastic job. So well done, my friend.
Hey, well, thank you. I do remember you being at TCU at that point. I watched that as well over the past weekend, and it seems like yesterday. I mean, I'm talking about the game, and other than the fact I got some gray hairs now when I didn't before, but I still remember that night like it was yesterday. That was such a huge atmosphere with the first ever blackout, and then all that was on the line, and the way it came down to the end with Brian Johnson with the slant pass to Freddie Brown to win it. It was really a special night for all of us here at Utah, and memorable for you as well as a TCU administrator at that point. But I appreciate that. And it's kind of been one of the cool things, Scott, before we dive into the topic, is all the networks are going back to this throwback programming of classic games and some cool stuff that we maybe haven't seen for a while.
Oh, I know. And I hope that, I know we submitted, a bunch of games to the Pac-12 network, and I hope they let us know when they're going to be airing those so we can push it out on all of our different social media channels.
Yeah, I know there's been some conversations, Scott, about having some former athletes and coaches hop on via Twitter and social media. So, yeah, fans, stay alert for that. We'll do some announcements on social media and UtahUtes.com when we get word of when those are coming. Well, Scott, again, appreciate you hopping on. I know you and Kyle Brennan, the other deputy AD, and Mark have just been besieged by huge decisions and changes and this desire to keep everyone informed and make big decisions the past 4 to 5 weeks. The biggest question we get that we thought would be good for you to kind of address is what we're doing with football season ticket sales. And normally this is the time of the year that fans are putting money down for tickets, and there's a lot of questions, just to be honest, about whether there will be a season, when does it start, how many games will we have. So if you could maybe just enlighten us a little bit about where we are with the season ticket renewal process at this point.
Sure. Well, first of all, Mike, we're going to be better versions of ourselves through this. I mean, this is unprecedented times. And so we've learned a lot, and certainly we're doing things that maybe we never ever thought of doing, like the Crimson Carpet Awards, and doing that on Facebook Live and YouTube. So I do believe we're going to come out better for this. And but I really, really appreciate, our fan base sticking with us. It's amazing to me, our renewal rate year to date is about the same. And so we're really, really excited about that. But we also know that there's some concerns out there. And the original deadline was April 29th, and we moved it to May 13th. Still really, really important that our football season ticket holders renew their season tickets. Football ticket revenue represents about $21 million, and it's so important for our operating budget. But I do want the fan base to know we will work with each individual person, and that if they believe that or concerned that there's not going to be a football season and they want a refund, we will absolutely give them a refund. But what we really would like them to do is allow us to credit them for the 2021 season. If for some reason, we don't play football next year, which I'm confident that we will, that a credit would just allow us to keep those monies for this fiscal year and just allow us to plan for 2021. So it's really, really important to at least get that CCX portion or the scholarship seating requirement in by the due date. And then in terms of a payment plan for the season ticket portion, we will work with our season ticket holders, up until the first football game. So that's where we stand today. But just wanted to try to ease some of our fans' minds in that regard.
I think that's a great way to go, Mark. Scott, excuse me. I mean, you look back to 2010, and we've been sold out for every home game since then. So fans are thinking, I want to make sure I have a seat when the season gets going, even if it's an abbreviated version or if it starts late. But there's also concern about the finances. So I think what you guys have done is a great compromise to make sure people can, if they want to, reserve seats and pay for the tickets, and not the options there for a refund or to credit to 2021. And Scott, I don't think people on the outside realize how much football revenue impacts everything. And even though the athletes are off campus, we're still maintaining facilities. We're still trying to have our staff help them with their academics and advise them on strength and conditioning and their health, and so many things that go into taking care of our student athletes, even during this time period where they're not on campus. The money coming in is so important to just keep things moving along for us.
Absolutely. Well said, Mike.
So that's great news. So again, for football fans, the deadline extended to May 13th, and refunds or credits available as options for your football season tickets. Scott, another question we get a lot on this show is about the Rice-Eccles Stadium Ken Garff Performance Zone project. And I told Mark a few months ago, I drove by today, and they are working away, and a lot is happening. It's a huge project. The target date for opening is the fall of 2021, so it won't be this year. It'll be a year from this fall. As I said, work is still progressing. What can you tell us from your desk, Scott, about that project?
Well, sales have been going great. We've sold 10 of our 14 suites, and I have no doubt that we'll sell the remaining 4. We just haven't been that aggressive yet. And we sold out of the Loge boxes, which we had 44 of them, and we sold those out in 3 weeks. And a normal process is about 12 weeks.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's such a credit to our fan base, but it also shows, the need for more, premium space. And we're going to provide this in this state-of-the-art Ken Garff Performance Zone. And we're so grateful for the Garff family for providing the lead gift, $17.5 million for the project. But you talked about finances. The selling of these premium seats represents $45 million over the life of the 14-year bond cycle. So once the debt service is paid off, that $45 million goes back into the athletic department to help with student athlete needs, not just football, but all of our sports. And that includes much needed, mental health practitioners, academic advisors, sports medicine professionals, upkeep of facilities, you name it, everything that we need to provide a world-class student-athlete experience.
Great stuff there, Scott. So again, that just sort of reemphasizes the need for, hey, if you can still contribute with your season tickets by purchasing real estate in that new South End Zone, the Ken Garff Performance Zone expansion, please do so, because it helps everyone. You point out mental health. That's been so important this past 4 to 5 weeks, Scott, with our student athletes being away from campus and everything going on. So again, very, very important. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Another topic that's been kind of tossed around, Scott, is some reconfiguration to the seating in the Huntsman Center for men's basketball. We've been the past couple of years, we've had the curtains down from time to time, and a major announcement coming up on plans for next year. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. As Mark mentioned, and as I've mentioned, we want to put our student athletes and coaches in the best situation to win games, and that really begins with atmosphere. And for those of you that attended the Minnesota game this past year, when we dropped the curtain on the upper bowl, it was a fantastic atmosphere, and ultimately we won the game. And Minnesota's no slouch. I mean, they're a Big Ten team and pretty good. So what we're going to do is, we're going to drop the curtain for all home men's basketball games for the 2021 season. And so we need to relocate all of the season ticket holders and fans that are in the upper bowl. And that represents 400 accounts and about 1,400 tickets. And so what we're going to do, we're going to relocate those folks down to the lower level between rows 25 through 31 at the same price that they were paying in the upper bowl, which is $120. And then those folks that are currently sitting in rows 25 through 31, we will lower their ticket price to that $120. So again, the reason why we're doing this is to provide the best experience for our student athletes, but we also think that it will really, really improve the game day atmosphere for our fans as well. It's just really interesting to note that a school like Texas and Baylor, for that manner, that both play in the Big 12, are both building brand new basketball arenas, and their capacities are both going to be under 10,000. So when you think about Texas and their fan base down there, not just in Austin, but the whole state of Texas, and they graduate 10,000 a year, and they're in a big market, and their basketball arena is going to seat less than 10,000. I think that says a lot to how important the game day atmosphere is in college basketball, and the influence that it has over winning games. So that's really what this is all about, and we just really want to thank our fans in advance for hanging with us through this change. But I think it'll be a fantastic change.
Yeah, Scott, I know for fans, this will be the first time I've heard about this, but this topic has been discussed in the department for a couple of years, and I know you and the Brain Trust has gone back and forth. But you mentioned Texas. I mean, how large enrollment is the Big 12. That's a trend across the country. They're building smaller arenas. They're downsizing where they can, and really the fact of the matter is every game now is on television, and it's a lot harder with people's lives to get to games in person. There's convenience of TV, and you see games on TV every night on the networks where there's a lot of empty seats. And I think what you guys have done here is realize, we don't need 15,005 anymore. We can have a better atmosphere, move everyone down lower. They have better sight lines, better seats, and it's kind of a win-win for everyone in terms of the atmosphere, better seats. So I'm excited to see how this plays out this winter. I know it's been talked about, and we've had it at various times. I was at that Minnesota game. That was a lot of fun that night with the atmosphere being what it was. So I think this will be kind of a cool thing for fans to get a taste of this winter. Scott, before I let you go, we've had some fan questions come in during the past week, and one I think you'll be able to tackle here. We've answered most of the rest during our conversation with Mark and yourself. A fan asking here, Scott, about the new golf facility that's going up on Guardsman Way. They were concerned that with the shutdown, that thing would be delayed. Anything you could tell us about that new golf facility?
As it stands today, we are moving forward with that project. We have all of the money secured for the project. And we think, by the time that a shovel goes in the ground, we'll have it all in cash. So we're really, really excited about that. And Coach Clegg's just done a fantastic job fundraising for that project, and he deserves, the lion's share of the credit for that, not just with his, fundraising acumen, but what he has done out in the community to get people believing in Utah men's golf and the fine student athletes that he's recruited. So we're really, really excited about that project, and I just can't wait till it's done. Mike, it's going to go right across from the Eccles football practice facility right there on Guardsman. So very, very visible piece of real estate. And I think will be a great recruiting tool and really a wow factor for, our student athletes.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett played golf here as a collegiate, so he knows what his team is going through, and as a northern program to have an indoor facility where they can go hit balls and work on things when there's snow on the ground during the winter months will be huge for his program. He's done a great job, and excited for him to get his own indoor facility on the U campus. Well, Scott, I'll say the same thing to you. I told the Mark, you guys have been under the gun and a lot of stressful moments, I'm guessing, for all of you, and as well as Kyle Brown in the last 4 to 5 weeks. The communication's been great. There's been some great campaigns with Crush the Curve, the Stay Inside Billboard campaign with our coaches, the social senior days on the UtahYouth.com site during the month of April on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just a lot of stuff going on to keep the Utah program out in the community, and in a time when people need diversions as much as ever, you and your staff have done a lot of things to help with that process. So continued great work, and we appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you, Mike, for the kind words. And really, it all starts with the leadership of this university with President Watkins. I mean, she's not only a great leader, but she's a great manager. And I'll say the same thing for Mark. What he's been able to do in leading us through all this has just been nothing short of amazing. And it really starts with communication. And he and Kyle Brennan and I mean, we have probably 10 to 13 Zoom calls a day, but we believe that it's really, really important. Even if we don't have anything to say, it's important just to connect with everybody in the athletic department and you and Mike Gilliland and everybody else in the department are really pulling your weight and doing a fantastic job. And we're so thankful, and it's just been a great team effort. So, I mean, I'm so looking forward to what tomorrow brings and the weeks ahead, because like I said, I think we're going to be better versions of ourselves. I think college athletics is, although it might look a little bit different, it's going to be stronger. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on today. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Nona Richardson as well, our senior women's administrator who oversees a lot of our student athlete support areas. I know she's been involved in some key decisions as well. So great job by you and the staff. And Scott, we'll catch up to you down the road.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Are you as well? Okay, that is Scott Kull, Utah's Deputy AD for External Relations, joining us on the Hear From Harlan podcast. When we come back, Mark will join Katie Faulk of the softball team with a one-on-one interview. That should be fun to catch up with Katie and just get her thoughts from the student athlete's perspective on this podcast. We're back with more in just a moment. This is the Hear From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi.
Time now for Utah's head man to catch up with one of Utah's star student athletes. Once again, here's Utah Athletics Director Mark Harlan on the Hear It From Harlan podcast.
Well, as always, the best part of this podcast is when I have the opportunity to speak to one of our great student athletes. And boy, do we have a great one today. And Katie Faulk, a junior on our softball team, the pride of Marana, Arizona, which is just right outside of Tucson. Katie has been such a great voice from our student athletes as it relates to this whole dynamic we're going through. And Katie, I just really want to thank you for joining us today, joining me, and really providing an opportunity from your perspective, representing our student athletes about how this process has been. So first of all, how are you doing? How are things going for you?
I'm doing okay. Every day is like a new adventure, something else comes, but I'm definitely getting used to being home a little bit, wishing that I wasn't, but taking advantage of, the time that I have here with my family.
You're safe and sound. You're back in Arizona with your family. I'm sure for any college student, that's a quick adjustment going back home. But I imagine it's also great to be around family as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I haven't been home, for 3 years, so it's definitely a little bit different, but it's might be a blessing in disguise. So.
Well, I wanted it to go back, maybe almost 5 or 6 weeks now, though sometimes it feels like 5 minutes and sometimes it feels like a full year. But I remember very vividly, I came to your practice. You guys were set to go up to play the University of Washington for a 3-game set. I think you were also going to play University of Seattle leading into that series. And I met with the team, and at that time there was starting to have some news, so to speak, about the virus. And we all made the decision at that time that flying up to Seattle was going to be something that we would support and do based on the data that we had. And then you guys got on the plane and a lot changed. So why don't you walk everyone through that trip?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember leaving for that trip and, there were a couple girls who were a little bit nervous, but overall we were really excited. I mean, we had been off to our best start in, almost 3 years for the program. And it seemed like we were going to have a really good year, and starting off Pac-12 play at Washington is like always an exciting place to go. And then we were in the airport and on the plane and going to the hotel, and there was some talk about, the fact that maybe we won't play in front of fans at Washington. And that was something that was kind of different and hard for us to hear, because Washington is such a fun atmosphere to play at, that thinking about playing in front of no fans was, kind of interesting and sad. And then the morning that we were supposed to play against Seattle, we were having breakfast, and Coach A came out to the breakfast table, and she took our 3 seniors and pulled them aside, and all of us sitting there, like our hearts just dropped. I mean, all of us were just speculating left and right on what was happening, because not even less than a day ago, everything was totally fine. And after she talked to the seniors, she pulled us into one of the conference rooms, and she told us that they had canceled our season. And the rest of that next 2 hours was just a blur. I mean, everybody on the team was just devastated. We were calling our parents left and right. I mean, my parents were luckily in Seattle, so I was able to see them because they had traveled up for that series. But it was just devastating, and seeing our seniors and how upset they were and how much it had changed in less than a day. I think we were all just in disbelief. Like, we didn't think it was real. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, I remember that too. Folks will remember that it was the night before, I believe, where, of course, 2 members of the Utah Jazz were tested positive, and the NBA shut down, and just the information flow from there. And I remember, hearing from the NCAA that we were going to have to shut down the winter championships. Skiing team, for example, was on the hill, and gymnastics was getting ready for their last home meet. But what caught us all off guard, and the NCAA has actually really reached back to apologize to a lot of us, was the announcement that came out so suddenly about the cancellation of spring sports. And I just felt for you guys so much in our other spring sports that, maybe we're expecting something like a delay or, something of that nature. Now we look back on it, we know it was the right thing to do, but at the time, boy, that was tough. So you went through that. You guys got back to campus, and kind of describe again kind of the things that happened once you got back to campus.
Because my parents were still in Seattle for that series, I actually got to stay the rest of the weekend with my parents. So I got to have a separate flight home than the rest of the team. But I do live with three of my other teammates. And so when I got back after that weekend, it was definitely weird. I mean, the team hadn't really seen each other. Everyone kind of knew that the season had ended, but there wasn't, like we didn't have a team meeting, or there wasn't like a senior day or a ceremony or something. And I think it's just because we were all still in shock and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then there was just constant communication about like, are people going to go home? Are people staying here? What is everyone going to do? And then some of my roommates ended up booking a flight for an hour, away from the time that it was. And she's like, can you take me to the airport right now? I need to go. Like, I'm going home. And, I almost did the same thing. I ended up driving home 2 days after I came back from Seattle, and it was very frantic and kind of scary, and left a lot of us just like not knowing what to do, and with like this empty feeling of like not having a closure to our season at all. And I think that was really hard for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and it's so helpful for I'm sure for everyone to kind of to take it off the sports page, which they've been reading, and just hear how an individual process it. So you got home, and that began kind of what all our student athletes are going through, back to their permanent addresses. So why don't you take people through kind of how you're staying connected with your team, with the department, and overall just the whole online academic programs going. Kind of walk people through the process and the operating rhythm that you're in now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely made it a point, and all of us on the softball team have made it a point to develop new routines. I mean, we're seeing that all over the place, that developing a new routine in this new scenario is something that's really important. So a lot of us, get up and like do our workouts in the morning, and then work on school. The transition to online has been easy for some of us and harder for some of us. It's just a different way of learning that we're not necessarily used to. But finals week is just around the corner, so that'll be done soon. But we have Zoom calls with the team twice a week, and they started off very informational and, letting us know what we can and can't do, what we can and can't do from the coach's perspective, and, like what's open, what's closed, if we're still in Salt Lake and where we are, and if we're safe and what we should do. And then in the past couple of weeks, it's turned more into just like a time to see each other and be able to catch up and have some fun. So we'll do, some rotations with our coaches, and one of our director of ops, she made a Kahoot game the other day with baby pictures of all the girls, and we had to guess whose baby picture went with who. And today, actually this afternoon, we're having a talent show over Zoom. And so we've kind of used it as a way to just lighten the mood a little bit and be able to see our teammates and have some fun without everything just being so serious all the time, which has been really nice.
Katie, that's great to hear. I know you've got a head coach that is really savvy and smart, and I know that she cares so much about all of you guys. And for all our head coaches, as I talk to them, that it's to a person, talks about how they miss the interactions. But I continue to think about you in the spring, athletes and what they went through. And adversity just has hit you guys so unexpectedly in the class of 2020, but also the teams of 2020, as I like to say, will be remembered for years to what you guys had to go through. Now, there was a little light in all of this in terms of the NCAA allowing for seniors, if they so chose, to come back. I refer to them in our department now as our super seniors, but also allowing the years that you guys had to be frozen. And if you want to come back yourself next year, I know it's too early to ask what you'll do in your future, but maybe just a little comment about that rule change and and how it's being received on your team.
Yeah, I mean, that decision that the NCAA made was a huge decision. And I know that hundreds of thousands of athletes across the country are so thankful that they did make that decision. Because even though it causes, some bumps in the road that a lot of schools may have to get over, at the end of the day, it was the right decision for the student athletes. And it was really awesome that the NCAA made that decision with our best interests in mind. And I know the seniors on our team, they've had a lot of hard decisions to make, and all of them are in different positions, and I think for us younger girls, juniors and down, it's definitely something on our minds. And, I'm more of a planner, and I've probably had my entire higher education plan planned out since, my freshman year of college. And so hearing that news, it kind of threw me for a loop, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, is it the best thing for me to stick where I was, or is it the best thing for me to come back and play? And I think that's something that's going through a lot of people's minds. I mean, everybody has their own plan that they were going to do, or their own passions or other things in their life, and how possibly a fifth year contributes to that plan and changes it, I think is just gonna, manifest over the next couple of years. And it's going to be a hard decision for everybody to make, but it's definitely nice that we have the opportunity to make it. So we're very, very thankful for the NCAA for making that decision.
That's really well said, because I know that I was involved in some conversations on this matter, and there were times that some of the conversations at the NCAA level, conference level, what have you, were worried about things like University of Washington, as an example, coming in to play softball next year, and they may have 10 more student athletes in their dugout, so to speak, than maybe Utah, right? Depending on how many seniors they have this year, and how do you deal with that? And I think finally just cooler heads prevailed and said, who cares, right? I mean, for this dynamic and for what happened, we'll manage it. I mean, there'll be some competitive things that will appear, but those seem trivial, right? In the broader idea of what happened to all our spring athletes is more important in giving them that opportunity. Real quick before I let you go, as I mentioned when I introduced you, you're part of our Crimson Council group, and I've talked about that group before on my podcast, how they serve the greater good of the department, obviously in philanthropic ways, but also during this period of time for myself and the senior staff have been really important groups to hear how things are going. So I want to thank you for that, but also give you the opportunity to kind of walk through how that's been on that group during this period.
Yeah, Crimson Council has been amazing during this time. And I think we honestly have done so much more during this period than I thought we would be able to. And it's really cool to see. And especially, for some senior student athletes who are part of fall or winter sports, where their seasons are over and they might be done with their collegiate competitive career, and they're still here in the Crimson Council and helping out the community and trying to find new ways to reach out to each other during this time. And I think that that's really, really awesome. And we've done a lot to try and connect back with the community in Salt Lake, even though we're all dispersed all over the country right now. We've done some things. The whole year we've been partnering with Backman Elementary School, and we've been able to write some letters and record some videos to send to those kiddos there, which has been a really cool experience, just telling those kids to keep their heads up and stay working hard in school, and this might be a really rough time for them, but everything's going to be okay. And it kind of reminds us to take our own advice. And it's really cool to be able to reach out to kids like that, even though we can't see them in person, and give them a hug. And we've also done some outreach on social media. And I know Missy Ryan Sattler, one of our gymnasts, a couple of weeks ago did a live book reading on our Instagram. And so kids can tune in and interact with her on a live platform. And I think that's just really cool. And as much as, we miss seeing our fans and we miss playing in front of them, I know that they miss us too. And so I think it's really awesome that we've found a way to still connect with them through the distance.
Well, it's been so great to watch you guys do your work. It's such an amazing group of leaders. You guys have done such a great job. And we're going to continue to lean on this group to navigate all of this. But they're not only the group that, is able to go back and message to all the teams about all the various things going on, but the fact that they've still, if not even like you said, even picked up the pace even more in philanthropic initiatives, and of course are running the Crimson Council Awards, which will be coming up this Monday night on YouTube. And I love it. It was this group that really was passionate about figuring out a way to do it, working with our staff. So Katie, thank you for your leadership. It's just been incredible. So glad that you'll be back with us next year. And I know you're studying kinesiology, and keep it up. Good luck in finals, and really appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
And welcome back to the Hear From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi, and some great interviews there. Mark, done by you with Katie Faulk of the softball team, and thanks as well to Scott Kull, Deputy AD for External Operations, dropping by the show to join us for the first time. And boy, Mark, just a crazy time in our lives with everything going on. But I thought Katie's interview, sometimes we get caught up in the numbers and the Crest the Curve campaign, and everyone's trying to get through their lives, and you forget about the human side of this. And to see someone like Katie talk about her experience with the team and what they're trying to do, it really, to me, sort of humanized this whole thing for us a little bit.
She's terrific. I mean, she's a great leader on our softball team, and certainly has risen up to the challenge of helping senior staff, myself, and others really guide the department in the decisions we're making during this period. But great to have her. Glad folks got to hear from Scott Kull, who leads a great team of professionals that are just being extremely creative during this time to make sure that we're in touch with our fans, we're communicating with our fans, and just really appreciate his work and others. And then, Mike, if I could just say before we end, I just want to thank the Utah, fan base. They've been so supportive. I've gotten notes. Our student athletes have gotten notes. It's just that whole idea that Katie talked about of, we're all going through a strange dynamic. We know they are too. And we're just thinking about them. And, Scott talked a little bit about our renewal rate being at a good place right now. And that's just such a statement to our fans and the partnership that we have. So it's very uplifting for me personally. It's very uplifting for the entire department. So just can't thank everybody enough. And I pledge to everybody that we will continue to communicate as information comes to us and decisions are made. It's the least we can do for everybody. And I really, really hope to see everybody really, really soon. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Well said, Mark. Hey, a couple of notes for fans. Social Senior Days each Monday, or make that each Tuesday and Thursday in April on UtahEats.com, as we honor all of our seniors who did not have their senior day. And Mark, for you, coming up on Monday, April 20th, 6:30, the Crimson Carpet Awards on the Utah Athletics YouTube and Facebook pages. Mark, most important question I'm going to ask you all day. Were you able to find a tux in this situation?
I'll put it to you this way, Mike. I am wearing a half a tux.
Okay.
We'll leave it like
it's
that.
The right half.
It's the right half.
All right, Mark. Hey, looking forward to that. Again, Monday, April 20th, the Crimson Carpet Awards hosted by Mark Harlan. Mark, I know you're super busy. As always, thanks for the time, and we'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. That's Mark Harlan, Utah AD. Thanks as well to Katie Faulk from softball and Scott Kull, our Deputy AD for External Operations. That will do it for the April edition of the Hear From Harlan podcast presented by Pepsi. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been the Hear It From Harlan podcast. Subscribe and listen all year long as we keep you up to date on Utah athletics.